On this week's episode of the Rambler Sports Locker, the women's golf team opened up their season, and Tim Edmonds and his Ramble analysts discussed this year's Super Bowl.
Also, men's basketball faced off against Drake University, and RSL reporter Amelia Ickes looks into the number 3 in this week's By the Numbers.
Welcome back to this week's episode of the Rambler Sports Locker. I'm Eric Moran.
And I'm Ioanna Kekatos. The Loyola men's basketball team saw plenty of action over the last 2 weeks, starting with a game against Southern Illinois January 27th at Gentile Arena. Loyola recovered from an embarrassing 35-point loss against Missouri State to down the Salukis 75-50. The Ramblers used a 35-7 run to close the half with a 42-19 advantage. From there, Loyola never looked back. Sophomore Cameron Krutwig led the Ramblers with a do-it-all stat line of 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. Next, Loyola took on Northern Iowa Wednesday, January 30th at Gentile. Loyola overcame a 7-point halftime deficit to defeat the Panthers 61-60. Krutwig sealed the deal with his first career three-pointer to put Loyola ahead 60-55 within 48 seconds remaining. Krutwig had another big night with 22 points and 11 rebounds. Redshirt senior Marcus Towns contributed 19 points in the victory. Loyola stumbled on the road 65-57 against Illinois State Saturday, February 2nd in Normal, Illinois. Loyola's offense could not find its rhythm. The team shot a trying 5 of 25 from three-point range in the loss. Towns and Krutwig led the Ramblers with 19 and 15 points respectively. A career-high 32-point effort from Towns vaulted Loyola past Drake 86-64 Tuesday, February 5th at Gentile. The offense was clicking as 4 Ramblers scored in double figures. Early in the game, sophomore center Cameron Krutwig suffered a head injury after a collision under the basket and was forced to the bench for evaluation of concussion-like symptoms. After passing all necessary tests, he was able to re-enter the game and finished with 19 points and snagged 9 rebounds. Freshman Cooper Kefis also knocked down 4 triples in the win. His desperation launch gave Loyola a 16-point lead at half, and Drake never came within 9 points the rest of the way. The highlight of the night came before halftime when freshman guard Cooper Kefis drained a 75-foot three-pointer as the buzzer sounded. The shot sent the fans at Gentile Arena into a frenzy and was featured on SportsCenter Top 10 as the night's #1 play. The victory puts Loyola at 15-9 on the season and first in the MVC. The Ramblers will next play at Valparaiso Sunday, January 10th. Head coach Porter Moser is again picking up the tab for a bus and tickets for 50 Loyola students to attend the game on a first-come, first-served basis.
Following the successful season the men's basketball team had last year and is continuing to have this season has brought some changes for the fans, including not having a guaranteed seat if you're a student.
RSL interviewed students on their thoughts about the changes made this season for fans.
I mean, last year was definitely a lot more of like I can just kind of show up 5 minutes before tip and have a good time and still get like good seats and like that, but now it's okay, I gotta leave my apartment at like 4 so I can get there before the gates open, get a decent spot in line, get like middle of the pack seats.
I mean, like coming in here freshman year, you know, it was like 12 students in the student section and that was about it. So, you know, it is a little harder because I can't just show up, 20 minutes before a game. But I do enjoy it. It's fun to have a full student section here before a game.
Yeah, it's really different. Last year, doors would open half an hour before games, and we would get there when they opened and be fine and could sit wherever we wanted. And now this year we're lining up 2, 3, sometimes even 4 hours before games to get spots.
The first game of actual season, I ended up having to go into overflow because it filled up.
I waited in that one for an hour and a half, so that was a long one.
I feel like if you want to get a seat, you can do that fine, but if you want to get good seats, you definitely have to do the whole waiting in line to get to the front thing.
In general, I think we're getting a lot more people per game. Like, it's not like last year we only had like a couple games where it was completely full. I don't know for sure, but I feel like we've definitely eclipsed that number already this point of the season.
It's definitely a lot louder during the game, and a lot more students are showing up, so just bigger in general, squeezing in there, but it's a good time.
I think being in the student section is something else. Like, you feel everyone around you chanting, and the stadiums are like moving just because everyone's clapping and jumping around, and it's really awesome. I accepted coming to Loyola before the whole Final Four thing happened, and then it started happening, and I already felt this big like school pride coming on. So by the time I came in, I was super excited. I was like, I'm gonna go to all the games, and I have.
You know, a lot of kids just want to go support some good basketball.
On January 25th, the Ramblers took on the Missouri State Bears. The Ramblers lost by a score of 84-49. Two Ramblers, however, did score double digits, with sophomore guard Ellie Rice scoring 11 and sophomore guard and forward Alexis Meyer scoring 10. 2 days later, on January 27th, the Ramblers traveled to Southern Illinois to face off against the Salukis. The Ramblers couldn't keep up with the Salukis and lost by a score of 74-63. Now, despite the tough loss, freshman guard Janae Gonzalez accounted for 30 of the Ramblers' points while scoring 8 three-pointers. On February 1st, the women's basketball team hosted the Illinois State Redbirds at Gentile Arena. The two teams went back and forth with lead changes, and early in the third quarter, the score was knotted up at 21-21. The Ramblers then went on a 9-0 scoring run and never lost the lead, winning with a final score of 61-59. Sophomore guard Ellie Rice and sophomore guard Abby O'Connor were the top two scorers, scoring 18 and 14 points respectively. 3 days later, on February 3rd, the Ramblers hosted the Bradley Braves. The Braves and Ramblers kept things close for 3 quarters, with the third quarter ending with a score of 45-42 Braves. The Braves ran away with it in the fourth quarter, outscoring the Ramblers 24-14, giving the Braves the 69-56 victory. Freshman forward Allison Day scored 18 points, while Abby O'Connor put up 17 points. With impressive showings in both games, freshman forward Allison Day was named MVC Newcomer of the Week. Day scored 31 points and grabbed 18 rebounds over the 2-game span. The Ramblers are currently 10-10 in regular season play and will take on conference rival UNI February 8th.
In indoor track and field news, members of the men's and women's teams competed at the Black and Gold Premier Saturday, January 26th in Iowa City, Iowa. Junior Eric Burns won his third long jump event of the season with a jump of 7.13 meters. Senior Reagan Todd Hunter broke his own school record in the 60-meter hurdles for the second week in a row with a time of 8.35 seconds. The Ramblers were back in action the next week at the 2-day Mayo Invitational in South Bend, Indiana, February 1st and 2nd. Redshirt senior Lindsey Brewis broke her school record in the 3,000-meter run with a time of 9 minutes and 25.62 seconds. The run was good enough to give her a 5th place finish and is in the top time in the MVC this season. Some Ramblers competed at the Windy City Invitational in Chicago February 2nd. In his Loyola debut, freshman Adam Clayton finished second in the 60-meter dash with a time of 6.99 seconds. For her record-breaking work at the Mayo Invitational, Brewis was named the MVC Female Track Athlete of the Week on Tuesday, February 5th. The track and field teams will split again this weekend, February 8th through the 9th. Athletes will compete at the Iowa State Classic in Ames, Iowa, or the GVSU Big Meet in Allendale, Michigan.
On January 31st, the Ramblers hosted the 5th-ranked UCLA Bruins at Gentile Arena. The Ramblers got off to a hot start in the first set, leading 6-0. Unfortunately for the Ramblers, the Bruins were able to crawl their way back, winning the first set 27-25. The Ramblers then responded by winning the second set, but later dropped the last 2 sets, losing by a final score of 3-1. Despite the loss, the Ramblers still were able to record a season-high 9 service aces. Seniors Colin Mahan and Will Tischler were the only Ramblers to reach double-digit kills. The Ramblers then looked to bounce back on February 2nd against the Penn State Nittany Lions. Things were not looking good in the first set for the Ramblers as the Nittany Lions maintained control of the lead the entire set and were able to win by 4 points. Despite the rough start, the Ramblers went on to win the second set and also take the third and fourth set in extras by winning a score of 3-1. Senior Colin Mahan also had an outstanding showing the victory, recording 24 kills and 2 aces. After Colin Mahan's impressive showing against UCLA and Penn State, Mahan was awarded MIVA Offensive Player of the Week for the second time this year. Over the 2-game span, Mahan recorded 37 total kills, averaging 4.63 kills per set. The team will next compete at Quincy University February 8th.
This would have been show number 3 of RSL this semester if it weren't for the freezing cold temperatures last week.
RSL reporter Amelia Ickes takes a closer look into the number 3 in this week's By the Numbers.
On this week's By the Numbers, I'll be taking a look at the number 3. On Tuesday, February 5th, the Loyola men's basketball team defeated the Drake University Bulldogs with a final score of 86-64. During the game, freshman guard Cooper Capus threw 4 3-pointers, including an impressive buzzer beater from 3/4 across the court to end the first half. The Ramblers tied the score 3 times throughout the game, ultimately taking the lead from the Bulldogs 3 times and leading to a Rambler victory. After Tuesday's game, the Ramblers only have 3 remaining home games for the season. Loyola holds its place as first in the Missouri Valley Conference, while the Drake University Bulldogs remain in 3rd place. Meanwhile, the UCLA Bruins defeated the men's volleyball team with a score of 3-1 on January 31st. However, the Ramblers bounced back with a 3-1 victory against the Penn State Lions on February 2nd. Meanwhile, Super Bowl 53 was played in Atlanta on Sunday, February 3rd. This championship game was the 3rd played in Georgia, with other Super Bowls played in the Peach State in 1994 and 2000. This year's Super Bowl was the lowest scoring championship game of all time, ending with a final score of 13-3. The New England Patriots came out on top after their 3rd straight Super Bowl appearance from 2017 to 2019, making this their 3rd championship title since 2010. That's all for this week's By the Numbers. For the Rambler Sports Locker, I'm Amelia Ickes. Back to you at the desk.
Thanks, Amelia. On February 4th, the women's golf team came back from their 3-month competition hiatus with an appearance in the Motor City Cup in Howey in the Hills, Florida. In one day of competitive play, the Ramblers defeated 6th-seeded Creighton in the quarterfinals, 4.5 to 1.5. On February 5th, the Ramblers faced 2nd-seeded Oakland in a semifinal matchup. Unfortunately, the Ramblers fell 4.5 to 1.5. Because of the loss, the Ramblers faced 4th-seeded IUPUI. The Ramblers won by a final count of 4.0 to 2.0, picking up points from senior Elena Bowser, junior Morgan Brown, sophomore Abby Myers, and freshman Jenny Milsinski. With the win, the Ramblers finished 3rd at the Motor City Cup. The men's golf team will be back in action next week at Earl Yestingsmeyer match play on February 11th and 12th. Last week's Super Bowl matchup between the New England Patriots and the Los Angeles Rams was the lowest scoring in Super Bowl history. The game lacked explosive offensive plays, and between both teams combined, only 1 touchdown was scored.
Ramble host Tim Edmonds and his Ramble analysts discuss whether the game was a showing of great defense or just plain boring in this week's Ramble.
Welcome to this week's Ramble. I'm Tim Edmonds here with my Ramble analysts Andy McDonald and Blazer Dosevich. This week we're discussing whether or not the Super Bowl was boring or a great showing on defense. Andy, I'll start with you.
Well, I don't see what everyone's complaining about. It was a close game all along, and it was close in the 4th quarter. Like, that's what people always want. Unlike the college football game, which is a snoozer, the later games, the World Series and the NBA Finals, those put me to sleep. This game was exciting.
The lowest scoring Super Bowl in history, 16 points. The next lowest was 21 points, and that was in the 1970s. There were no touchdowns in the first 3 quarters, and it was 3-3. Okay, this was clearly the most boring Super Bowl. We had 2 really boring teams. New England we've seen 9 times in the Super Bowl, and the Rams, they don't even have a fan base. So we can't get behind the teams. It was a low-scoring game. It wasn't played well. We were talking about the punters more than we were talking about any player on the field. So it was just a snoozer. Sorry.
We were talking about defense a lot, and defense still wins championships. New England usually, when they're in the Super Bowl, has a better defense, and
that doesn't mean.
Wouldn't you rather them play defense well instead of just roll over? And if they relied on Brady, I mean, it would have been in trouble.
You got some good points there, Blaze. I'm gonna go back to you, but why do you think the average fan would find it so boring?
Because the Fairweather fan likes to see points. They like to see high-flying plays. They like to see the receivers go up and make touchdown plays. We only had 1 touchdown, and it was like a 2-yard run with little time in the game. It was just terrible. And more fans like to watch a 54-51 game, like the Monday Night Football game in November, Rams-Chiefs. That was the highest-rated Monday Night Football game in 10 years. And this Super Bowl was the lowest-rated Super Bowl in 10 years. So clearly the fans like more points, as do I. It was just a snoozer. I couldn't stand to watch the game. And it's the Super Bowl.
Okay, but not every game's going to be like that. I mean, defense can be just as exciting and compelling. Did you see a Steelers-Patriots game earlier this year? That was low scoring, still exciting. I mean, not every game is going to be like the Rams and the Chiefs. That doesn't mean it can be exciting.
A regular season game versus the Super Bowl. We've had so many great Super Bowls in a row. Last year there were a combined 74 points in the game. This year, 16. To go from 74 points to 16, it's just so boring.
Would you rather it been a blowout?
And everything around the game was boring too, I must add. The commercials stunk, and the only big headline of the halftime show was that Adam Levine ripped his shirt off.
We're gonna end up here, but first, just to end off, just a closing argument. Why, to me at least, do you think the game was good, and why was it bad, and why do you think a casual fan wouldn't watch?
Would you rather it been a blowout like the 49ers and Cowboys in the 80s and 90s blew out their opponents all the time? I mean, many people say those were boring Super Bowls. Not every Super Bowl is going to be exciting. It happens. It's football. You got to watch more than one game. If you just watch that game, nothing else football related, I'm sorry, you might be disappointed once in a while. Not every football game can be perfect. And defense wins championships, like I said. And New England had a better defense, and they prepared better, and they were interesting.
That's
Blaze, quickly just wrap it up.
Sure,
here.
that's all fine and good. New England deserves to win the Super Bowl, but that doesn't mean the game wasn't boring. 16 points, 1 touchdown in the whole game, and when New England scored and got up 10 points, you knew the game was over. There was no excitement to the end of the game, and it wasn't played well. We were talking about the punters as MVPs. That's all I gotta say.
Defense,
at the end of the day, it was a great argument. It was a great Super Bowl in my opinion. This week I'm going to have to go with Blaze though. Just had a pretty compelling argument, at least in terms of why the average fan wouldn't enjoy it and wouldn't enjoy the game. Let us know which side you're on by voting in our Twitter poll at Loyola RSL using the hashtag RSL Ramble. That's it for us this week at the Ramble. I'm your host Tim Edmonds. Back to the desk.
Thanks, Tim. I don't know about the game, but the commercials sure were kind of boring.
You know what else was disappointing? That halftime show.
Good thing RSL never disappoints.
It's very true. For our full episodes and the chance to get in on the conversation, follow and like our social media handles for an up-to-date look at all things Rambler Sports.
Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Eric Moran.
And I'm Ioanna Kekatos. Check back next week for another episode of the Rambler Sports Locker.
And as always, don't forget to turn out the lights.